That night, she struck my hand in the dining room just for touching the silver set my grandfather brought, but nobody knew it was the key worth $10 million. My father watched. The lawyer nodded slightly, and my stepsister smiled for the camera. The next morning, the whole city thought I was ungrateful. 36 hours later, they knew I was the only one who had been preparing for 3 years. My name is Aria Whitfield. For the past 3 years, Foxton. Colorado has been my prison, though it is one constructed of floor-to-ceiling glass and brushed steel, meticulously perfumed with Veronica's imported gardenia diffusers. I returned to the Whitfield Overlook, the sprawling, cold monument my father built on the ridge, not as the structural engineer I had become, but as a full-time caregiver. My father, Graham Whitfield, the patriarch and driving force behind the Whitfield Meridian Group, suffered a massive stroke 3 years ago. It silenced the booming voice that commanded boardrooms and left his entire left side immobile. More critically, it fractured the aura of invincibility that was the true foundation of WMG. I was in Canyon Vista when the call came, 2,000 miles away, finalizing the tension modeling for a cantilevered steel bridge. It was my project, the one that would finally carve my own name into the industry, distinct from the heavy shadow of the Whitfield conglomerate. I left it unfinished. I traded my blueprints for prescription schedules, my steel-toed boots for the silent carpet of the rehab wing. I stopped calculating physics and started calculating insurance copays, medication interactions, and the precise, agonizingly slow degrees of progress in physical therapy. For 3 years, my world shrank to the metrics of his recovery. WMG is the family legacy. It is a real estate empire that builds big, expensive, and increasingly impersonal structures that dominate the Colorado skyline. My mother, the one who taught me that architecture was about how people felt inside a space, has been gone for a long time. 8 years ago, Veronica Hale arrived. She slid into my mother's life, my father's house, and the company's social calendar with the silent, frictionless efficiency of a luxury vehicle. Veronica does not understand foundations. She understands facades. She doesn't build. She curates. In less than a decade, she successfully transformed the Whitfield name from a construction firm into a lifestyle brand, with herself as its chief arbiter. And every brand requires a new, fresh face. That face is not mine. It belongs to Sierra Whitfield, my half-sister, Veronica's daughter from a previous life. Sierra lives in Los Angeles, a city that perfectly suits her. She exists primarily as a stream of highly optimized, professionally lit content. She is the designated next generation of WMG, the heir apparent. Despite never having logged a single hour on an active construction site, she attends the right galas, accepts awards for sustainable innovation using talking points I drafted, and speaks eloquently to lifestyle magazines about the Whitfield legacy of integrity. She is perpetually absent from the actual business, yet perpetually the center of its public narrative. While Sierra was mastering her camera angles and Veronica was networking, I was building. In the quiet hours between 2 and 5 in the morning, after my father's night nurse had settled in, I built my escape. I founded AWS Studio Structures. It's registered through a series of anonymous holding companies, completely firewalled from WMG, funded by the small inheritance my mother left me. It is just me, a render farm running in a cooled basement closet, and an obsessive focus on sustainable, human-centric design, biophilic integration, passive heating solutions, materials with low embodied carbon. It is everything WMG is not. It is my lifeboat, engineered one methodical, invisible beam at a time. Right now, WMG is desperate. The market has shifted. Their old-world model of build big and move on has left them looking like a relic. They are hemorrhaging credibility after 2 projects missed environmental targets. They are pinning every last hope on securing the Aquila Biosystems campus contract. It's a $50 million project, but it's more than the money. It is a reputation life raft. It's their one chance to pivot into the lucrative, forward-thinking world of biomedical infrastructure and prove they are still relevant. And I am the one doing the actual work. I am the ghost in the WMG machine. I am the invisible engineer, the name conveniently left off the memos. I'm the one who wakes up at 5 a.m. to take the frantic calls from subcontractors when a foundation pour is scheduled incorrectly. I'm the one who quietly rewrites the structural integrity reports, catching catastrophic errors that would have cost the company millions in delays and litigation. The initial proposal for the Aquila project was a disaster. A glossy brochure outsourced by Shoreline Atelier, Veronica's preferred PR firm. The draft had the vibration-sensitive clean rooms located directly adjacent to the main loading bay. The contamination risk alone would have gotten WMG laughed out of the bidding process. I spent 72 hours straight, fueled by black coffee and cold fury, rerouting the entire internal logistics flow, redesigning the interstitial floors to accommodate the complex HEPA ductwork, and running the new structural load calculations. I sent the revised 30-page technical addendum to my father's executive assistant. 3 days later, I watched Sierra on a local business broadcast, explaining her innovative design for workflow integrity, using the exact phrasing I had embedded in my executive summary. Shoreline Atelier packaged my work, polished it, slapped Sierra's digital signature on it, and pushed it to the press. The already tense dynamic in the house shifted again 6 months ago with the sudden, constant presence of Oswald Hale. He is Veronica's father, Sierra's maternal grandfather. He is old, sharp, and dripping with the kind of quiet money that makes my father's portfolio look new. I had never met the man in the 8 years Veronica had been married to my father, and now he is a permanent fixture, strangely chummy with Graham, my father, whose recovery has stalled, seems to hang on Oswald's every word. Oswald brought a gift, the Regency set. It is an antique, heavy silver cutlery service for 24 people. It is ornate, clearly valuable, and utterly out of place in Veronica's minimalist glass box. Her reaction to it was immediate and fiercely possessive. It was placed in a climate-controlled, specially lit, glass-fronted cabinet in the main dining room. "It is a priceless family heirloom," she announced at dinner that night, her voice tight with a warning. "It represents our history. No one is to touch it, ever." An heirloom, a history, from a man who had never visited before. But it is Oswald himself who unnerves me. I have watched him when he believes no one is looking. He will sit in the dining room late at night, long after Veronica is asleep and my father is in his wing. He will ask the housekeeper, who mistrusts him, to unlock the cabinet. He doesn't polish the silver. He studies it. He will take out a single fish fork and a dessert spoon, placing them on the dark mahogany table under the direct, harsh light of the chandelier. He turns them. He measures. He will use the tines of one fork to measure the engraved crest on the handle of a knife. He aligns the spoons in a perfect, equidistant row, then nudges the third and fifth spoon just a few millimeters out of alignment. He squints. He takes notes in a small, black, leather-bound book. This is not reverence. This is not admiration. This is calculation. This is data entry. And Veronica, who values the set only for its monetary and social worth, sees none of it. This family is built on illusions, and illusions are fragile. WMG's internal data infrastructure is a joke. Veronica invested millions in the public-facing website and Shoreline's annual retainer. But the internal servers are a patchwork of outdated software, lazy passwords, and non-existent security protocols. It is sloppy, it is arrogant, and it gave me the access I needed. 3 months ago, while searching the shared drive for a geotechnical report, I found the compliance archive for the North Ridge development. I found the inspection reports, and I found the alterations. They had changed the dates, digitally scrubbing the original timestamps to make it appear they had met environmental deadlines they had clearly and flagrantly missed. It was clumsy, obvious, and profoundly illegal. I did not confront them. I did not report it. I simply continued to be invisible. I photographed every altered document, every faked signature, every scrubbed timestamp. I ran the images through a digital notary service, embedding the current date and my own encrypted signature into the metadata of each file. Proof of when I found them. Not just what I found. I uploaded the entire damning package to a secure triple-encrypted offshore cloud vault, the same one I use for AWS Studio. It is accessible only by me. Then, last week, I found the envelope. I was in my mother's old study, the one room in the house Veronica avoids because the dark wood and leather-bound books are too heavy and outdated. I was looking for her old architectural textbooks, needing to feel a connection to something real. Tucked inside her worn copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, I found it, a heavy cream-colored envelope, thick as cardstock. It was sealed not with glue, but with a perfect, unbroken disc of dark blue wax, pressed with a signet I did not recognize. Her handwriting was on the front, strong, elegant, and precise. It was not addressed to me by name. It was addressed to a state of being. When you are truly unseen, open. That was 6 days ago. I have carried it with me ever since, its weight a solid presence in my bag. The seal is still intact. I can feel the thick, folded paper inside. I am waiting. I am waiting for the precise moment when they are all so blinded by the spotlight they have aimed at Sierra, so certain of my insignificance that they forget I am in the room at all. That is when I will open it. That is when the invisible becomes real. My name is Aria Whitfield. For the past 3 years, Foxton, Colorado has been my prison, though it is one constructed of floor-to-ceiling glass and brushed steel, meticulously perfumed with Veronica's imported gardenia diffusers. I return to the Whitfield Overlook, the sprawling, cold monument my father built on the ridge, not as the structural engineer I had become, but as a full-time caregiver. My father, Graham Whitfield, the patriarch and driving force behind the Whitfield Meridian Group, suffered a massive stroke 3 years ago. It silenced the booming voice that commanded boardrooms and left his entire left side immobile. More critically, it fractured the aura of invincibility that was the true foundation of WMG. I was in Canyon Vista when the call came, 2,000 miles away, finalizing the tension modeling for a cantilevered steel bridge. It was my project, the one that would finally carve my own name into the industry, distinct from the heavy shadow of the Whitfield conglomerate. I left it unfinished. I traded my blueprints for prescription schedules, my steel-toed boots for the silent carpet of the rehab wing. I stopped calculating physics and started calculating insurance copays, medication interactions, and the precise, agonizingly slow degrees of progress in physical therapy. For 3 years, my world shrank to the metrics of his recovery. WMG is the family legacy. It is a real estate empire that builds big, expensive, and increasingly impersonal structures that dominate the Colorado skyline. My mother, the one who taught me that architecture was about how people felt inside a space, has been gone for a long time. 8 years ago, Veronica Hale arrived. She slid into my mother's life, my father's house, and the company's social calendar with the silent, frictionless efficiency of a luxury vehicle. Veronica does not understand foundations. She understands facades. She doesn't build. She curates. In less than a decade, she successfully transformed the Whitfield name from a construction firm into a lifestyle brand, with herself as its chief arbiter. And every brand requires a new, fresh face. That face is not mine. It belongs to Sierra Whitfield, my half-sister, Veronica's daughter from a previous life. Sierra lives in Los Angeles, a city that perfectly suits her. She exists primarily as a stream of highly optimized, professionally lit content. She is the designated next generation of WMG, the heir apparent. Despite never having logged a single hour on an active construction site, she attends the right galas, accepts awards for sustainable innovation using talking points I drafted, and speaks eloquently to lifestyle magazines about the Whitfield legacy of integrity. She is perpetually absent from the actual business, yet perpetually the center of its public narrative. While Sierra was mastering her camera angles and Veronica was networking, I was building. In the quiet hours between 2 and 5 in the morning, after my father's night nurse had settled in, I built my escape. I founded AW Guagu Studio Structures. It's registered through a series of anonymous holding companies, completely firewalled from WMG, funded by the small inheritance my mother left me. It is just me. A render farm running in a cooled basement closet, and an obsessive focus on sustainable, human-centric design, biophilic integration, passive heating solutions, materials with low embodied carbon. It is everything WMG is not. It is my lifeboat, engineered one methodical, invisible beam at a time. Right now, WMG is desperate. The market has shifted. Their old-world model of build big and move on has left them looking like a relic. They are hemorrhaging credibility after 2 projects missed environmental targets. They are pinning every last hope on securing the Aquila Biosystems campus contract. It's a $50 million project, but it's more than the money. It is a reputation life raft. It's their one chance to pivot into the lucrative, forward-thinking world of biomedical infrastructure and prove they are still relevant. And I am the one doing the actual work. I am the ghost in the WMG machine. I am the invisible engineer. The name conveniently left off the memos. I'm the one who wakes up at 5 a.m. to take the frantic calls from subcontractors when a foundation pour is scheduled incorrectly. I'm the one who quietly rewrites the structural integrity reports, catching catastrophic errors that would have cost the company millions in delays and litigation. The initial proposal for the Aquila project was a disaster. A glossy brochure outsourced by Shoreline Atelier, Veronica's preferred PR firm. The draft had the vibration-sensitive clean rooms located directly adjacent to the main loading bay. The contamination risk alone would have gotten WMG laughed out of the bidding process. I spent 72 hours straight, fueled by black coffee and cold fury, rerouting the entire internal logistics flow, redesigning the interstitial floors to accommodate the complex HEPA ductwork, and running the new structural load calculations. I sent the revised, 30-page technical addendum to my father's executive assistant. 3 days later, I watched Sierra on a local business broadcast, explaining her innovative design for workflow integrity, using the exact phrasing I had embedded in my executive summary. Shoreline Atelier packaged my work, polished it, slapped Sierra's digital signature on it, and pushed it to the press. The already tense dynamic in the house shifted again 6 months ago with the sudden, constant presence of Oswald Hale. He is Veronica's father, Sierra's maternal grandfather. He is old, sharp, and dripping with the kind of quiet money that makes my father's portfolio look new. I had never met the man in the 8 years Veronica had been married to my father, and now he is a permanent fixture, strangely chummy with Graham, my father, whose recovery has stalled, seems to hang on Oswald's every word. Oswald brought a gift. The Regency set. It is an antique, heavy silver cutlery service for 24 people. It is ornate, clearly valuable, and utterly out of place in Veronica's minimalist glass box. Her reaction to it was immediate and fiercely possessive. It was placed in a climate-controlled, specially lit, glass-fronted cabinet in the main dining room. "It is a priceless family heirloom," she announced at dinner that night, her voice tight with a warning. "It represents our history. No one is to touch it, ever." An heirloom, a history, from a man who had never visited before. But it is Oswald himself who unnerves me. I have watched him when he believes no one is looking. He will sit in the dining room late at night, long after Veronica is asleep and my father is in his wing. He will ask the housekeeper, who mistrusts him, to unlock the cabinet. He doesn't polish the silver. He studies it. He will take out a single fish fork and a dessert spoon, placing them on the dark mahogany table under the direct, harsh light of the chandelier. He turns them. He measures. He will use the tines of one fork to measure the engraved crest on the handle of a knife. He aligns the spoons in a perfect, equidistant row, then nudges the third and fifth spoon just a few millimeters out of alignment. He squints. He takes notes in a small black leather-bound book. This is not reverence. This is not admiration. This is calculation. This is data entry. And Veronica, who values the set only for its monetary and social worth, sees none of it. This family is built on illusions, and illusions are fragile. WMG's internal data infrastructure is a joke. Veronica invested millions in the public-facing website and Shoreline's annual retainer. But the internal servers are a patchwork of outdated software, lazy passwords, and non-existent security protocols. It is sloppy, it is arrogant, and it gave me the access I needed. 3 months ago, while searching the shared drive for a geotechnical report, I found the compliance archive for the North Ridge development. I found the inspection reports, and I found the alterations. They had changed the dates, digitally scrubbing the original timestamps to make it appear they had met environmental deadlines they had clearly and flagrantly missed. It was clumsy, obvious, and profoundly illegal. I did not confront them. I did not report it. I simply continued to be invisible. I photographed every altered document, every faked signature, every scrubbed timestamp. I ran the images through a digital notary service, embedding the current date and my own encrypted signature into the metadata of each file. Proof of when I found them. Not just what I found, I uploaded the entire damning package to a secure, triple-encrypted offshore cloud vault, the same one I use for AWS Studio. It is accessible only by me. Then, last week, I found the envelope. I was in my mother's old study, the one room in the house Veronica avoids because the dark wood and leather-bound books are too heavy and outdated. I was looking for her old architectural textbooks, needing to feel a connection to something real. Tucked inside her worn copy of Marcus Aurelius's Meditations, I found it. A heavy cream-colored envelope, thick as cardstock. It was sealed not with glue, but with a perfect, unbroken disc of dark blue wax, pressed with a signet I did not recognize. Her handwriting was on the front, strong, elegant, and precise. It was not addressed to me by name. It was addressed to a state of being. When you are truly unseen, open. That was 6 days ago. I have carried it with me ever since. Its weight a solid presence in my bag. The seal is still intact. I am waiting. I am waiting for the precise moment when they are all so blinded by the spotlight they have aimed at Sierra, so certain of my insignificance that they forget I am in the room at all. That is when I will open it. That is when the invisible becomes real. The Whitfield Overlook was no longer a home. It was a soundstage. Shoreline Atelier's lighting crew had spent 2 days washing out the architectural integrity of the house, replacing the warm, recessed lighting with harsh white panels that made everyone look sharp and tired. Tonight was the kickoff for the Next Gen CEO campaign. It was Veronica's masterpiece, a carefully constructed narrative designed to introduce Sierra as the inevitable, brilliant successor, just in time to woo the Aquila Biosystems board. The partners were here, sipping Veronica's obscenely expensive champagne, while a discreet 3-camera crew live-streamed the intimate family dinner to WMG's social channels. I was, as usual, relegated to the role of glorified helper, monitoring my father's comfort. Veronica, dazzling in silver, was holding court, explaining how Sierra's vision for sustainable communities was driving the company. Sierra, in deep red, nodded thoughtfully, having memorized the talking points I wrote. Then, Oswald Hale made his entrance. He wasn't announced. He simply appeared, followed by 2 security guards carrying the heavy, velvet-lined oak box. "Veronica," he said, his voice quiet but cutting through the manufactured chatter. "A dinner celebrating heritage requires the heritage itself." Veronica's smile froze. This was not in her script. "Father, I told you, it's too valuable." "Nonsense." He directed the guards to the main dining table. "We will eat on the Regency set tonight." He turned to the assembled guests, the camera panning to capture him. "We must eat on our heritage to understand how to keep it." A nervous laugh went around the table. The set was unpacked. It gleamed under the aggressive lighting. It was beautiful, heavy, and impractical. We sat. The mood was stiff. My father, Graham, was seated between a nervous investor and Oswald. His left hand was useless, his face partially slack. The nurse had cut his food in the kitchen, but the place setting was still claustrophobic. His water glass was too close to his immobilized hand, and the heavy, ornate salad fork was resting precariously on the edge of his charger plate. He shifted, trying to get comfortable, and the fork teetered. I saw it about to fall. I leaned forward, moving to slide the useless fork out of his way, to give his right hand more room to maneuver his spoon. It was a simple, practical gesture, an act of caregiving. My hand never reached the fork. Veronica's hand shot across the table like a snake. She didn't just block me, she struck. Her rings, 3 large, square-cut diamonds, made impact with the delicate bones on the back of my hand. It was not a slap, it was a hit, a sharp, violent crack of bone against metal and gemstone. The sound was sickeningly loud in the suddenly silent room. The laughter stopped. The cameras, all 3, swiveled directly to me. My hand recoiled, a bright, hot bloom of pain flashing up my forearm. Veronica gasped, clutching her chest as if she had been struck. She was a brilliant actress. She stage fell backward into her chair, her eyes wide with manufactured terror. "Aria!" Her voice was a perfect blend of fear and disappointment. "What are you doing? How could you?" I stared at her, stunned, the pain radiating from my hand. I looked at the fork, still sitting on the plate. I looked at my father. The camera zoomed in on my face. I was the aggressor. I was the lunatic, lunging for the priceless silver, disrupting the perfect dinner. My father looked at me, his eyes cold. The fog of his stroke cleared just enough for the old Graham Whitfield to surface. "You went too far, Aria," he said, his voice slurred but clear enough for the microphone clipped to his lapel. Shame, hot and acidic, washed over me, not for what I did, but for what they saw. Oswald Hale watched. He didn't move. His expression was utterly neutral, but his eyes tracked me, then the fork, then Veronica. He was logging data. I slowly, deliberately, placed my throbbing hand beneath the table, out of sight. I said nothing. I just registered. Sierra, seated to my left, leaned in close, the scent of her perfume suffocating. She whispered, so low only I could hear, her smile still fixed for the cameras. "The press will have this by morning. You should learn to lose gracefully, sister." It took less than an hour. Shoreline Atelier was lethally efficient. The clip was edited, packaged, and pushed. WMG heir apparent attacked at dinner by volatile stepdaughter. They used the footage of me lunging, moving the fork, and Veronica's gasp, cutting just before the actual impact. They paired it with my father's cold rebuke. My phone ignited. The comments were a deluge of digital bile. Ungrateful, spoiled, violent. Why is she even there? Poor Sierra, having to deal with that. I was, in the public eye, exactly what they wanted me to be. The unstable, jealous remnant of a previous life, trying to sabotage the bright, new future. At 2 a.m., I locked the door to my studio. The house was finally quiet. My hand was a mess, swollen and bruised, a deep red welt rising where the rings had connected. I went back to the dining room. The caterers had cleaned, but the oak box was still there, locked. But one piece was not in the box, the salad fork I had tried to move. A housekeeper, unnerved by the night, had simply placed it on the sideboard, separate from the rest. I took it to my studio. Under the high-intensity beam of my drafting lamp, I saw it. It was not a scratch. On the flat, recessed part of the handle, just below the ornate crest, was a tiny, almost invisible mark. It looked like a flaw in the silver, but it was too precise. I pulled out my digital macro lens, the one I used for inspecting hairline fractures in concrete core samples. I hooked it to my computer. I focused the lens. The image flashed onto my 40-inch monitor. It was not a flaw. It was laser engraving, microscopic. It was a string of characters, followed by a symbol, a tiny, perfect set of scales, the scales of justice. My blood ran cold. I recognized the formatting instantly. It was a string of coordinates, latitude and longitude, followed by a date code. I typed the coordinates into my mapping software. They resolved into 3 separate locations, 3 parcels of undeveloped land outside Denver. I cross-referenced the coordinates with my hidden WMG archive. My breath caught. It was a perfect match. These were the 3 parcels of land from the altered environmental reports, the ones WMG had acquired for almost nothing, just before the zoning laws changed, by faking their compliance dates. Oswald wasn't just observing, he was communicating. The realization hit me. The set was not an heirloom, it was a test. It was a living document, a breadcrumb trail left by a very smart, very careful old man who knew he was surrounded by sharks. The silver was Oswald's insurance policy, his true last will and testament, hidden in plain sight, and Veronica, by striking me for touching the silver, had revealed she only saw its surface value. I reached into my bag and pulled out the cream-colored envelope. My mother's wax seal. When you are truly unseen, open. I had been seen by the entire city, and simultaneously, I had never been more invisible. My father, my sister, my stepmother, they had all looked at me and seen only the monster of their own creation. They had denied my reality. They had denied me. My hand was steady. I broke the seal. Inside, there were 2 things. The first was a single sheet of heavy stationery, with my mother's handwriting. It said, "Aria, they will only try to erase you when you become a threat to what they have stolen. Do not let them. Your integrity is your armor. But this is your sword. Let the truth speak for itself. Do not raise your voice. Raise the quality of your argument." The second document was not a letter. It was a legal memorandum, a copy, certified by a notary 18 years ago. It was an analysis, prepared by her own lawyers, of a specific clause in Graham Whitfield's prenuptial agreement with my mother, a clause that, her lawyers argued, carried forward into any subsequent marriage contract he signed, specifically regarding the stewardship of family assets. It was a complex anti-abuse provision. It stated that any transfer of legacy assets, the definition of which clearly included WMG, to a new spouse or stepchild was conditional on the established, proven long-term competence and ethical conduct of the recipient. It was designed to prevent a predator from seizing control of the company. It was designed to stop exactly what Veronica was doing. My mother had seen Veronica coming 8 years before she arrived. I now had 2 halves of a weapon, Oswald's coordinates, which proved WMG's current ethical failures, and my mother's memo, which provided the legal framework to challenge the very person overseeing those failures. The strike, the silver, the coordinates, the envelope, the memo. They thought they had won a PR battle. They had accidentally started a legal war. My first instinct was to release the photos of my hand, to fight back on Instagram, to tell the world what happened, but Sierra's voice echoed in my head, "Learn to lose gracefully." She was wrong. I would teach them how to win methodically. I would not respond to the media. I would not engage in their shallow, dirty fight. I looked at the calendar. The WMG emergency shareholder meeting, the one called to finalize the Aquila bid and formally announce Sierra's new role, was in exactly 72 hours. That was my stage, not theirs. I picked up my phone. I bypassed my contacts and dialed a number I had committed to memory years ago, one given to me by my mother's executor. A woman answered on the second ring. Her voice was sharp, precise, and expensive. Rowe, Talia Rowe, the shark of Denver corporate law, the only lawyer who had ever gone head-to-head with Graham Whitfield in an acquisition dispute and won. "Talia," I said, my voice perfectly calm. "My name is Aria Whitfield. I have a situation regarding WMG, a set of antique silverware, and a remarriage estate provision." There was a pause. I could hear her smile. "Well, that's new. I'm listening." I explained. The coordinates, the memo, the altered files. "They think the silver is a decoration." "Aria," Talia said. her voice electric. "You think it's a living document. If the silver is a code, we need to establish an unbroken chain of custody and get it forensically authenticated. We need to do it tonight." Talia Rowe did not operate on normal hours. By 3:15 in the morning, less than an hour after my call, she had mobilized North Peak Forensics. These were not jewelry appraisers. They were metallurgists who testified in federal court. I met their chief analyst at 4 a.m. in a sterile, white-walled lab that smelled of ozone and cleaning solvents. My hand, wrapped in a compression bandage, throbbed in time with the hum of the ventilation. I placed the heavy salad fork on a blue, sterile mat. The analyst, a man named Jacoby, simply nodded. He worked with the quiet, detached efficiency of a bomb technician. He examined the fork under high magnification, then used a laser scanner. "The piece itself is 19th century British, high-grade sterling," he said, his voice flat. He pointed to the monitor. "The engraving is not." He zoomed in on the coordinates and the tiny scales of justice. "This is micro-laser engraving. The technology is military grade, or at least high-end industrial fabrication, and it is new, based on the molecular disturbance at the edges of the engraving. I'd placed this work within the last 2 years, 100%. A living message, not an antique." Talia, who had been watching from the doorway, stepped in. "We need the full set." She worked with a speed that was breathtaking, citing risk of spoliation of evidence in a potential fiduciary dispute. She had a court order by 6 a.m., demanding the Regency set be submitted for temporary analysis. An armored car, flanked by Talia's associates, arrived at the Whitfield Overlook. Veronica was apparently apoplectic, but the order was ironclad. By 9 a.m., we had all 144 pieces laid out on white foam tables. Jacoby and his team scanned every single one. "Here," Jacoby said, pointing to the bolster of the main carving knife. It was almost invisible, hidden where the blade met the handle. "Lex 15.4. "Lex," Talia said, her eyes lighting up. "Law," she turned to me. "Your mother's memo, the anti-abuse clause." "It was a legal theory," I said, pulling the documents from my bag. My mother's lawyers were analyzing a provision in her prenup. They argued it created a stewardship precedent for the family trust. "A precedent is all a good lawyer needs," Talia said. Her fingers flew across her keyboard. She was aggressive, pulling files I had no idea were accessible. 10 minutes later, she had it, the sealed prenuptial agreement between Graham Whitfield and Veronica Hale. We scanned the document, and there it was. Section 15. Subsection 4. It wasn't just a precedent, it was a clone. Veronica's lawyers, likely rushing and seeing it as boilerplate, had allowed the exact same stewardship clause to be inserted. It was an ethical successor provision. It explicitly required any designated heir to the legacy assets, the WMG Holding Company, to demonstrate provable competence in management and indisputable ethical conduct. It was designed to prevent a hostile, incompetent, or fraudulent actor from seizing the company via marriage. "My God," I whispered. Oswald knew this clause was in his daughter's prenup. "He didn't just know," Talia said. "He's using it. He's testing her. And Lex 15.4 is the name of the test." Now the coordinates. I went back to my own secure server, the one holding my 3 years of invisible work. The coordinates on the salad fork were the 3 parcels of land in the North Ridge dispute, the ones where WMG was facing massive fines for environmental non-compliance. "This is where it gets worse," I told Talia. I pulled up the file archive I had built, the one Shoreline and WMG thought was buried. WMG falsified the completion dates to avoid the new penalties. I found it 3 months ago. I brought up the documents, the original engineering reports with the real dates, the forged reports with the new dates, and then I brought up my own files. "I ran the numbers," I said, my voice hardening. I knew the non-compliance would destroy the project. I redesigned the water reclamation and soil stabilization plans on my own time. I sent the revised plans, the ones that would bring the project into compliance, to the management team. And? Talia asked. And they implemented my solutions, I said. I clicked to the next file. Then they buried my reports, scrubbed my name, and issued this. On the screen was a press release from Shoreline Atelier, dated 2 months ago. Sierra Whitfield spearheads innovative ecological solution for North Ridge, saving project. Talia stared at the screen. They didn't just steal your work, Aria. They used your work to cover up their own fraud, and then used it as a PR launchpad for Sierra. She stood up and began pacing. This is it. This is the entire case. She began dictating into her phone. 1. WMG, under current management, commits felony environmental fraud. 2. The designated heir, Sierra, is promoted using fraudulent PR based on this cover-up. 3. This conduct is in direct violation of the Ethical Successor Clause, Lex 15.4. 4. The true competent party, Aria Whitfield, has the documented proof of both the fraud and the solution. It's beautiful. It's a closed loop. We have to stop them from destroying the servers, I said. Too late for them, Talia said, smiling. I sent data preservation notices to WMG's General Counsel and Shoreline Atelier's holding company at 5 a.m. The moment my process server handed them that envelope, any deletion of data became a federal crime. They are frozen. My phone buzzed. A blocked number. I picked it up. Aria Whitfield? A man's voice asked. He sounded terrified. Who is this? My name is Derek Haynes. I'm a senior fabricator at the WMG Industrial Shop, the Heavy Mechanics Division. I saw the video last night. What they said about you, it's not right. What do you know, Derek? I asked, my heart hammering. I know about the silver, he whispered. Mr. Hale, Oswald, he came to my shop. He didn't go through WMG. He came to me privately, about 18 months ago. Talia motioned for me to put the phone on speaker. He brought the whole Regency set in its case, Derek continued, his voice shaking. He said he needed engraving, insurance, he called it. He brought the codes on a flash drive, coordinates, that Lex thing. He said he was setting a test, a succession test. He said the family was full of people who worshipped shiny things, but he needed to find the one person who knew how to read. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I watched him. He was sharp, brilliant. He knew exactly what he was doing. And then, for the last 6 months, I've been hearing the whispers from Veronica's team, that he's confused, that he's losing it, that she needs to take over his financial decisions. It's a lie. He's lucid, and I can prove it. How? Talia cut in. Our shop, because we sometimes work on defense contracts. Our security is intense. We have high-definition video and audio of every workstation, 24/7. I have the entire session, 2 hours of Oswald Hale, lucid, sane, and giving me explicit instructions to engrave a legal challenge onto his family's silver. I have a copy of the video file. I hung up. The room was silent. The slap, the humiliation, it all snapped into focus. Veronica thought she was protecting a priceless antique, a symbol of her status. She was furious that I would treat it like a common object, moving it to help my father. But Oswald wanted it treated like an object, a tool, a piece of data. He wasn't testing our reverence. He was testing our curiosity. Veronica, by punishing me for touching it, failed the test, and by striking me, she triggered the entire mechanism. She had inadvertently pointed me directly at the answer. The shareholder meeting, Talia said, her voice sharp. It's at the Rockwell Summit Hotel in 48 hours. That's our venue. We don't leak. We don't post. We don't respond to the PR smears. We walk in there and we present this data, not as a family squabble, as a shareholder derivative action. Wait, I said. One last piece, the most important one. Aquila Biosystems, the $50 million contract, that's the entire justification for Sierra's promotion. They're announcing it at the meeting. Talia frowned. That's a problem. If WMG has that contract, the board will forgive anything. I need to make a call, I said. Not as Aria Whitfield, as AWR Studio Structures. It took 20 minutes to get past the gatekeepers to Aquila's CEO, a man named Malik Reyes. Mr. Reyes, I said. This is Aria from AWR Studio. We were a finalist for your campus project. Aria! His voice was warm, instantly recognizable from his keynotes. I'm glad you called. We were about to reach out. The board has made its decision. We are unanimously selecting AWR Studio. Your proposal was, well, it was the only one that treated our patients as people, not just occupants. The biophilic modeling for the recovery wings, the integration of natural light, it was brilliant. The contract is yours. I gripped the edge of the table. Mr. Reyes, you didn't choose WMG? He laughed. WMG? Not a chance. Their proposal was a glossy marketing deck. It looked like a brochure for a condo. Yours was a piece of engineering. We selected AWR Studio based on an anonymous, blind submission, the work, and only the work. To be honest, we only learned about your family connection. During the final diligence, it gave us pause, but the design was just too good to ignore. Then I have a request, I said, taking a deep breath. The WMG shareholder meeting is in 2 days. They are planning to announce that they got the contract, and to name Sierra Whitfield as the new CEO based on it. There was a long, cold silence. I see, Reyes said. That is problematic. I will be at that meeting, I said. I intend to present the truth, both about who really designed the project they're claiming and about other data-driven irregularities in their operations. Ms. Whitfield, he said, his voice now cautious. We are a biomedical company. We do not get involved in family drama. This is not drama, I said firmly. This is data. You chose my firm because of its integrity and transparency. That is all I am bringing to that meeting. Facts, clean, clear, and legally verified. I am asking you to be there, not to support me, but to support the truth of your own decision. Another pause. Very well, Ms. Whitfield, he said. Aquila's board will be in attendance, but be very clear. If this presentation attacks individuals or deviates 1 inch from verifiable facts, we are out. We will pull the contract and we will publicly state why. All I have are the facts, I said. Thank you. I hung up. I looked at Talia. She was smiling. So, Talia said, you have the fraudulent management. You have the legal clause to remove them. You have the star witness and the video proof. And you just personally secured the $50 million contract they were lying about. Yes, I said. Good, she replied. Now we build the presentation. The first move was tactical separation. The day after the disastrous dinner, while the internet was still carving me up, a draft appeared in my inbox from WMG's legal department. It was a discretionary compensation agreement, a one-time payment of $50,000, labeled as gratitude for domestic assistance, rendered to Graham Whitfield. It was severance. It was hush money. It was designed to frame me as a compensated domestic helper, not a family member, and certainly not an engineer who had saved them millions. Talia laughed when she read it. They're stupid, she said, her voice sharp over the phone. This is a gift. It's an insult, I countered, the paper shaking slightly in my hand. It's a declaration of independence, she corrected. They are formally stating, in a legal document, that you are not an employee. You are not bound by any WMG non-disclosure or non-compete agreements. They have just handed you a blank check for your testimony. Sign it. I signed it. The wire transfer hit my personal account, the one entirely separate from AWR Studio, by noon. By 2 p.m., that exact $50,000 was wired out. I used it to sign a 6-month lease on a temporary office suite in the Rockwell Summit Hotel itself, 3 floors below the conference center where the shareholder meeting would be held. I paid for a dedicated fiber line, 3 high-end workstations, and a large format plotter. "Why the hotel?" Talia asked when she met me there. The room was sterile, empty, and smelled of new carpet. "Because," I said, looking out the window at the bustle of preparations for the meeting, "I want them to know I am already in the building, and I am paying my own way." I was no longer the invisible daughter in the house. I was an independent entity, a tenant with a lease, operating on their home turf. The next 48 hours were a blur of pure distilled focus. Talia and her legal team handled the framework. I built the narrative. We were not just building a case. We were building a counter-narrative to the one Shoreline Atelier had spent years and millions crafting. The presentation was 15 slides, not one more. Every slide was a fact, scrubbed of emotion, backed by an appendix of metadata that could be accessed on demand. Slides 1 through 5 were the invisible work, the 5 community projects WMG had nearly bankrupted through mismanagement, the ones I had quietly saved, the Senior Living Center, whose HVAC system I redesigned over a single weekend, saving them from a winter lawsuit, the youth shelter whose foundation flaw I caught from a subcontractor's blurry photo, preventing a catastrophic failure. On each slide, I showed the original flawed blueprint, my revised blueprint pulled from my own server, and the final completion photo. My name was nowhere on the official WMG files, but the metadata of the KD files and the server logs told the truth. Slides 6, 7, and 8 were my independent work. 3 projects AWS Studio had completed under the radar: a small, zero-carbon winery in Oregon, a structural consultation for a seismic retrofit in California, a pro bono community center in rural Colorado. I included the client testimonials, the ones that praised my obsessive attention to detail and human-centric approach. Slide 9 was the Aquila Biosystems project. I did not show the whole $50 million campus. I showed one room, a patient recovery suite. I put my original, human-centric design next to the sterile, cost-focused box WMG had first proposed. I showed the simulation I had built, a dynamic light model illustrating how the angle of the windows would provide natural, non-glare sunlight to a patient's bed between the hours of 8 a.m. and 2 p.m., aligning with circadian rhythms to promote healing. "This," I told Talia, pointing to the simulation of warm light moving across a digital bed, "is the counter-argument. They see buildings as assets. I see them as tools for human recovery. That is the core difference. That is why we won. We will focus on this." I hired my own PR consultant, a small, sharp 2-person team Talia recommended. They were specialists in high-stakes corporate clarification, not lifestyle fluff. The temptation, their lead strategist, a woman named Clara, said, is to show the photo of your bruised hand. It's sympathetic. It's human. "No," I said immediately. "That makes it personal. That makes it drama. This is not drama. This is a standards violation. We do not attack Veronica or Sierra as people. We present their actions as a failure of process, a breach of ethical standards, and a direct, quantifiable risk to shareholder value. We use their words, their press releases, not mine." Clara nodded, a small, approving smile. "Good. No mud. Just the balance sheet. Process, data, standards." While I built the slides, Talia sent the invitations. The first was to the Foxton County Environmental Commission. She sent them an anonymized, formal request to attend the WMG shareholder meeting for a public interest presentation regarding the North Ridge development, specifically citing the coordinates engraved on the Regency set fork. She attached the original, non-falsified environmental reports from my server. The CEC, already suspicious of WMG after months of delays, confirmed their attendance within an hour. My phone was active. I was looking at the WMG org chart, at the names I knew, the ones who, like me, did the real work and were erased. I made 3 calls. Derek Haynes, the fabricator, was the first. The other 2 were a senior quantity surveyor and a brilliant logistics coordinator, both women I had seen Sierra publicly dismiss in meetings. I am making a presentation in 2 days. I told each of them, I cannot promise you what the outcome will be, but I am offering you a position at AWW's studio starting next week, your current salary plus 20%, no matter what happens. All 3 accepted, their voices tight with a relief that was almost painful to hear. The first members of my new team. The evidence needed to be delivered, but it had to be timed for maximum impact. I drafted 3 letters and printed them on heavy AWW studio letterhead. The first was to my father, Graham. It was short. I did the work. The work you claimed was Sierra's. The Aquila contract is not WMG's. It is mine. The silver set is not an heirloom. It is a test. You are failing it. The second, to Veronica. Your right to manage WMG is conditional on ethical conduct, per Section 15, Subsection 4 of your marital agreement. Your fraudulent actions regarding North Ridge and your public claims about the Aquila contract constitute a direct breach. The silver set is not a priceless relic. It is a legal document. The third was to Oswald. I read the silver. I found the coordinates and Lex 15-4. I have the video from Derek Haynes. I have the proof. I am ready. At the bottom of each letter, I printed a unique QR code. Each code linked to a separate, password-protected folder in my cloud vault, containing the specific evidence relevant to them. The legal memos, Derek's high-definition video file, the falsified reports. That night, my phone rang. Blocked number. It was Oswald. His voice was frail but as clear as glass. You opened the letters, he stated. It was not a question. I haven't sent them. The QR codes, he said. The server access. I saw the pings. My system alerted me. You are preparing. I waited. I was wondering which of them would be smart enough to look, he said, a dry rustle in his voice that might have been a laugh. I thought it might be Graham. I never thought it would be you, the girl they ignored. What do you want me to do? I asked. Do? His voice was sharp. If you truly read the silver, you do not need to be told what to do. You already know. He hung up. The last 24 hours were about logistics. We hired North Peak Forensics, the same team that analyzed the silver, to do a complete 3-dimensional laser scan of every single piece of the Regency set. We created a perfect digital archive, notarized and time-stamped, establishing a precise chain of custody. The physical silver was now irrelevant. I had the data. I called the Rockwell Summit AV department, identifying myself as the head of AWW's studio, a new tenant. I requested a full diagnostic and security sweep of the conference hall's projection system. I'm running a high-security visualization for a client. I told the tech, I need to ensure the hardline connection is secure and that no one can remotely swap the presentation file. He assured me he would lock the system down personally, 30 minutes before the event. Talia's team drafted the terms, not a merger, not an acquisition, a simple project-based memorandum of understanding. AWW/studio would collaborate with WMG on the Aquila campus. If WMG so desired, the terms were brutal. WMG would provide capital. AWW's studio would retain full creative control and oversight. The contract was reviewable on a quarterly basis. If WMG violated a single ethical or transparency standard, I could walk, effective immediately, and take the Aquila contract with me. Finally, I scheduled the couriers, 2 separate, bonded delivery agents. Courier 1, I instructed, will deliver this envelope to Graham Whitfield in the main hall. You will arrive at precisely 3:02 p.m. You will not give it to an assistant. You will walk onto the stage if you must. He must sign for it. Courier 2, I told the second agent, will deliver this envelope to Veronica Whitfield at 3:08 p.m. Wait for the disruption, then deliver. I stood in my new, empty office, looking at the city lights. I practiced my final slide. It was just white text on a black background. I practiced the line, over and over, until the emotion was gone and only the engineering remained. I am not stepping away from my family. I am stepping out from the shadow cast over me. My phone pinged. It was Malik Reyes from Aquila. My final check. Mr. Reyes, I am moving forward. The presentation is locked, but I must confirm, Aquila is prepared to answer questions from the press about this. WMG and Shoreline will respond aggressively. They will claim you were stolen, that I am unstable. You must be ready to affirm your choice. The reply came back in less than a minute. Ready? The ballroom at the Rockwell Summit Hotel smelled of industrial carpet cleaner and cold coffee. It was a space designed for maximum neutrality, but Veronica had done her best to impose the WMG brand on it. Massive vinyl banners bearing the stylized W logo hung from the ceiling, lit in an unflattering blue. I sat in the third row from the back, near the aisle. I was just another guest in a dark suit. Talia was 2 rows behind me, near the exit, her laptop open. Derek Haynes was in the press gallery, registered as Talia's paralegal, and in the front row, seated with the investors, was Malik Reyes, CEO of Aquila Biosystems, looking impeccably bored, flanked by 2 of his board members. Veronica, in a severe white dress, was adjusting a camera angle, her voice a low hiss to the Shoreline Atelier crew. She was producing her own coronation. Sierra stood nearby in a striking deep red dress, her CEO-era color. She was looking at her phone, her lips moving silently, practicing her acceptance. My father, Graham Whitfield, looked better than he had in months. His suit was perfectly tailored to compensate for his left side. He moved through the investors, shaking hands with his good right hand, his voice regaining some of its old, confident timbre. He believed the narrative. He believed the $50 million Aquila contract was in the bag, a testament to his legacy and Sierra's bright future. He thought today was the day WMG pivoted back to glory. At 2:55 p.m., precisely on schedule, my father took the stage. "Thank you," he began, his voice amplified, filling the room. "Thank you for joining us. For 60 years, the Whitfield Meridian Group has not just built buildings, we have built the future of this state." He spoke of legacy, he spoke of resilience, he spoke of the recent challenges as mere turbulence. I looked at the investors. They were polite, attentive, but their faces were skeptical. They needed the life raft. "But a legacy is not just about the past," Graham continued, his voice warming. "It is about the next generation. It is about a new vision. It is about the future, and that future is—" He paused for dramatic effect, and in that pause, the doors at the back of the ballroom opened. A man in a courier uniform, holding a single, heavy legal envelope, walked briskly down the main aisle. It was 3:02 p.m. Veronica's head snapped toward the courier. Her eyes narrowed into slits. She signaled to a security guard to intercept him. The guard stepped in front of the courier. "Sir, you cannot be in here." The courier did not stop. "I have a time-sensitive, signature-required delivery for Mr. Graham Whitfield. I am required to deliver it to him directly." He stepped around the guard and approached the stage. The room was silent. The cameras were still rolling, now aimed at the disruption. My father, confused, leaned down from the podium. Yes, that's me." The courier handed him the digital scanner and the envelope. My father, flustered, signed with his right hand. The courier nodded once, turned, and walked out of the ballroom as quickly as he had entered. My father stared at the envelope. It had my A.W. Gavshus studio logo on it. He looked out into the crowd, searching, confused. Veronica's face was pale with fury. She quickly signaled to Sierra. "Sierra," she said into the microphone, her voice tight but artificially bright, "why don't you come up and begin your presentation?" It was 3:03 p.m. Sierra, ever the professional, recovered instantly. She glided onto the stage, took the second microphone, and beamed at the audience. "Thank you, Father. Thank you, Veronica. It is an era of unparalleled opportunity." The audience, sensing the shift, warmed to her. She was polished. She was the story they had been sold. But my father was not listening. He was distracted. standing just off to the side of the podium. He was fumbling with the envelope, trying to open it one-handed. He tore it open. He pulled out the single sheet of my letterhead. The cameras were on Sierra, but my father was still wearing his active lapel microphone. He squinted at the paper. I watched his face drain of all color. "The silver is not an heirloom," he muttered, reading my words. "It is a test." His voice, a confused, amplified whisper, echoed through the ballroom. Sierra faltered, her words, sustainable synergy, catching in her throat. "What?" my father said, still reading, his voice trembling as he hit the next line, the microphone picking up every syllable. "The Aquila contract is not WMG's. It has been awarded to AWW Studio Structures." It was 3:05 p.m. The word Aquila cut through the room. The investors turned as one. The quiet chatter became a loud, confused roar. Sierra froze. "Father," she hissed, forgetting her mic was live. "What are you doing?" Graham looked up, his eyes wild, uncomprehending. He saw me. I was already on my feet. It was 3:06 p.m. "If you need clarification on that point, Mr. Whitfield," I said, my voice cutting through the chaos, "I can provide it right here." Every camera in the room swiveled to me. Veronica looked as if she had been struck by lightning. "Arya, sit down. Security." "I believe this clarification is relevant to the shareholders," a new voice said. It was Malik Reyes. He was standing in the front row. "My name is Malik Reyes, CEO of Aquila Biosystems. I can confirm what Mr. Whitfield just read. The $50 million campus contract was awarded, following a blind selection process, to AWW Studio Structures based on the merit of their design." The room imploded. Sierra, panicking, grabbed the microphone. That's a misunderstanding. We are in partnership with that software company. It's all part of the WMG family." It was 3:08 p.m. Malik Reyes did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "Aquila Biosystems," he said, his voice cold and precise, "is a biomedical research firm. We are not a software company, and we are not in partnership with WMG." At that exact moment, the second courier walked in and handed a stunned Veronica her own envelope. She didn't even see him. Her eyes were locked on me. I walked down the aisle, up the side steps to the stage, and plugged my own flash drive into the AV technician's laptop. He looked at me. I nodded, and he switched the feed. My presentation took over the massive screens. "My name is Arya Whitfield," I said, my voice amplified by the podium mic. "I am the founder and chief engineer of AWW Studio Structures." It was 3:09 p.m. For the past 3 years, I have also been the uncredited structural engineer on multiple WMG projects. Slide 1, the Northridge Senior Center, the flawed HVAC plan, my revised, hand-drawn schematics from my notepad, the final, functioning system. Slide 2, the youth shelter, the flawed foundation, my email to the project manager, time-stamped, detailing the urgent need for a new rebar configuration. Slides 3, 4, 5, project after project, proof of invisible work, followed by the anonymous design awards my studio had won. The room was deathly quiet. The investors were no longer looking at Graham or Sierra. They were reading. "Which brings us to the Aquila project," I said. "WMG's proposal was rejected in the first round. My proposal, submitted anonymously, was selected. I showed the light simulation for the patient recovery wing. Then, I clicked to slide 11. The screen was filled with a high-resolution, macro photograph of the salad fork, the tiny laser-engraved coordinates and the scales of justice. "This is the Regency set," I said. Veronica Hale was correct when she called it a priceless heirloom, but not because of its age or its silver content, because it is a legal document. I clicked again. The forensic report from North Peak, certifying the engraving was less than 2 years old. I clicked again. A video file played. The entire room saw the interior of Derek Haynes's workshop. They saw Oswald Hale, looking frail but perfectly lucid, instructing Derek. "The coordinates on the forks." His voice filled the room. "The legal citation on the knife. It's a test. Derek, insurance." The video ended. I clicked again. The screen showed Lex 15.4. "This," I said, pointing, "is the legal citation. Section 15, subsection 4 of the WMG Marital Trust, the Ethical Successor Clause, a provision requiring any heir to the WMG legacy to demonstrate indisputable ethical conduct and competence, not PR." It was 3:13 p.m. "Which brings me to the coordinates," I said. "They correspond to 3 parcels of land. The North Ridge Development." A hand shot up in the front row. Not an investor. A woman I did not recognize, but who sat next to the man Talia had identified as the county commissioner. "Ma'am," a reporter called out. The woman stood. "I am Catherine Cole, from the County Environmental Commission. We were invited here today to hear a presentation on this. Are you alleging that WMG falsified compliance reports related to those 3 specific sites to avoid environmental penalties?" It was 3:15 p.m. Veronica's face was as white as her dress. I did not answer the question directly. I simply clicked to the next slide. It showed 2 documents side by side. The original WMG report, dated in March, showing a clear violation, and the forged WMG report, dated in January, claiming compliance, and in the corner, the metadata, extracted by Talia's team, showing the file had been illegally altered by an IP address originating from Shoreline Atelier's headquarters. The sound in the room changed. It was the sound of 100 phones being switched to live video. The press gallery was electric. It was 3:17 p.m. The headlines were already being written. The next-gen CEO campaign was over. The succession by Silverware test had begun. "Stop this!" My father, Graham, bellowed. His voice, aided by the microphone, was a desperate roar. He was gripping the podium with his good hand, his knuckles white. "This is a private family matter. This meeting is adjourned. Security, turn off her microphone." A large man in a WMG logoed blazer moved toward the AV station, but the investors were already on their feet, shouting. "Sit down, Graham," one yelled. "She has the floor." Malik Reyes, who had remained standing, held up a perfectly calm hand. The authority in the gesture silenced the room more effectively than my father's roar. "Mr. Whitfield," Malik said, his voice the epitome of boardroom politeness, yet utterly glacial. "We are not party to any family matter. Aquila Biosystems is here for one reason: to confirm the competence of our chosen vendor. We selected AW's Studio Structures based on the singular merit of their design. That is a fact." He turned his gaze slightly, addressing the investors and the press. "We were led to believe, as you were, that WMG would be announcing our decision today. We are merely here to ensure that decision is represented accurately. Please continue, Ms. Whitfield." It was a masterful deflection. He was not taking my side. He was taking the side of the facts. He was defending his own company's integrity from WMG's attempted hijack. Veronica finally found her voice. She had ripped open the second courier's envelope. Her face, which had been white with shock, was now mottling with a deep, furious red. She was staring at the contents. It was not just a letter. It was the high-resolution photograph of her signature on the intake form when Oswald first delivered the Regency set. A document where she formally, eagerly accepted full custodianship and legal responsibility for the Hale legacy assets, including the silver, she had signed for the very test she just failed. She threw the paper to the floor. "You?" she shrieked, pointing a trembling, ring-clad finger at me. "You are a monster. You are a vindictive, horrible. You are destroying this family." The camera zoomed in on her. The mask of the polished, concerned matriarch was gone. This was pure, unfiltered rage. I kept my voice level. I spoke clearly into the microphone. I am not destroying anything, Veronica. I am opening the black box that Mr. Oswald Hale locked. You looked at that silver and saw a prop. I looked at it and saw a manual. And since Mr. Hale's lucidity has been repeatedly called into question by current WMG management, I continued, I would like to clarify that point for the shareholders. Talia, from the back row, cued the AV technician. The slide on the screen was replaced by a video file. It was a recorded deposition, taken just yesterday, time-stamped and legally notarized. Derek Haynes, the fabricator, appeared, sitting in Talia's conference room. He was nervous, but resolute. Derek Haynes, confirm under oath that on the date specified, he said, reading from his own sworn affidavit. Mr. Oswald Hale, appearing fully lucid, of sound mind, and acting under his own free will, personally commissioned me to laser engrave the specific codes, the coordinates, and the Lex 15.4 citation onto the Regency set. He called it his insurance policy and a test of succession. The high-definition video file of this entire 2-hour interaction is authentic and has been provided to my counsel. The video ended. The slide with the falsified reports returned. Mr. Haynes's testimony confirms the intent behind the silver, I said. These next slides confirm the necessity for it. The screen filled with 3 more WMG contracts, not just North Ridge, a medical clinic in Boulder, a small municipal bridge, all for high-profile public works, all bearing falsified environmental compliance dates or doctored material inspection reports. These actions, I said, managed by the current executive team, have exposed this company to tens of millions of dollars in fines and litigation, but the operational failure is worse than the legal one, because the solutions were already in-house. I clicked again. The screen showed my memos, the solutions, my signature block at the bottom. These are the remediation plans I submitted 3 months ago, 6 months ago, 9 months ago, plans to fix these issues, plans that were implemented, while my name was scrubbed, and the problem was covered up with fraudulent PR and blamed on supply chain issues. An investor in the second row, a man I recognized from the WMG annual reports named Blevins, stood up. He was a major stakeholder. Mr. Whitfield, I demand an emergency session of the board. We are invoking the fiduciary duty clause. We demand a full, independent audit this afternoon. All communication from WMG and Shoreline is to cease immediately. 2 other major investors stood up. We second that. We demand an injunction. Sierra, seeing her CEO era disintegrating, finally broke her paralysis. She grabbed the microphone from my father. You can't. This is stolen data. She is using proprietary internal WMG data. She stole this. We will sue you. We will sue everyone. This was the moment. The entire press corps turned. A new voice, sharp, clear, and utterly unimpressed, cut through the room. Talia Rowe. She was already standing, laptop under her arm. As counsel for AWU Studio Structures, Talia said, addressing Sierra but speaking to the room, I must correct the record. My client, Ms. Aria Whitfield, is not an employee of WMG. We have here, she held up a piece of paper, a signed compensation agreement from WMG's own legal department, dated 2 days ago, defining her as an independent contractor, paid $50,000 for domestic assistance. A ripple of shock and disgust went through the room. The words domestic assistance hung in the air, an insult that had just become my shield. As such, Talia continued, her voice like ice, she is not bound by any WMG internal data policies, non-disclosure agreements, or non-competes. Furthermore, the data presented, the KD files, the memos, the solutions, were created on her own time, on her own hardware, as part of her own intellectual property portfolio. It does not belong to WMG. It belongs to her. WMG used her data without credit, not the other way around. There will be no lawsuit, Ms. Whitfield, but, Talia smiled, there will be a countersuit for intellectual property theft and slander of title if you press the matter. Sierra's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. She looked at Veronica, but Veronica was already gathering her purse. And then, the quietest, most devastating shift. I saw them moving: Derek Haynes, who had slipped back into the room, Sarah, the quantity surveyor, and Miriam, the logistics coordinator, the three people I had called. They walked down the aisle, past the stunned investors, and stood at the bottom of the stage, near me. Sarah held up her WMG badge. "We're with A.W. Baku Studio now," she said, her voice shaking but clear. "We're the ones who actually implemented Ms. Whitfield's fixes." The press cameras found them, three of WMG's most critical, non-executive personnel, defecting live on camera, with resumes in hand. Malik Reyes stood up again. "One final clarification," he said. "Aquila Biosystems is thrilled to be working with the AW's studio team. Their commitment to transparency and human-centric design is exactly what we were looking for. In light of this partnership, and seeing the team that is now clearly coalescing around Ms. Whitfield, our board has authorized an increase in the project scope. We are prepared to add an additional $20 million for a Phase 2 research wing, contingent on Ms. Whitfield's team retaining full oversight and maintaining the standard of absolute transparency they have demonstrated here today. A $70 million contract, not just secured by me, but increased because of my actions." My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Talia's paralegal. It was a screenshot. Shoreline Atelier's website, the Our Partners page, the WMG logo, which had been there this morning, was gone. They had already cut their losses. Another buzz. A market alert. WMG, OTC. The fictional over-the-counter stock was in free fall. Trading had been halted. I stepped back to the podium. The room was mine. "This was never about a family dispute," I said, my voice echoing in the stunned silence. "This was never about an apology for a night at dinner. This is about standards. It's about the standard of truth in our business, and the standard of care in our buildings. For 3 years, I watched WMG prioritize facades over foundations, PR over people." I looked at my father, who was now sitting slumped in a chair on the stage. "Tonight," I said, "I do not need an apology. I need a new standard. We all do, a standard for every single structure we build that is intended to serve human beings." I looked at the investors. "The choice is yours." I turned off the microphone. For a second, there was absolute silence. Then, a single person clapped. It was Catherine Cole, from the Environmental Commission, then Malik Reyes, then the 3 new members of my team standing at the foot of the stage. Then, like a wave, the investors, the press, the other guests, a rolling, sustained applause. I looked at my father. He looked back at me, his eyes wide, and for the first time in my life, I saw him not as a father, but as a defeated executive. He gave a single, almost imperceptible nod, a bow. Veronica was gone. Sometime during the applause, she had slipped off the stage and out a side door. Sierra was still there, frozen in place, her red dress looking garish under the harsh lights. The microphone was still in her hand. Useless. I picked up my flash drive. I put it in my pocket. I turned my back to the stage, to my father, to Sierra. I walked down the steps. I did not look back. I was halfway down the aisle when Malik Reyes fell into step beside me. The cameras were flashing, but he ignored them, his focus entirely on me. "That was," he started. "It was data," I said. "It was," he agreed, a small smile playing on his lips. "Now, about that natural light rendering for the 3rd-floor landing, I have a question about the angle of the afternoon sun in the west recovery wing." The chaos of the ballroom faded behind me. The sound of flashbulbs was replaced by the quiet, technical cadence of an engineer's work. The show was over. The job had begun. The aftermath was not quiet. It was an explosion, just of a different kind. The press, having been handed the most cinematic corporate narrative of the decade, went into a frenzy. The morning headlines were brutal and, for once, accurate. The Denver Business Journal ran, "The Silverware Test: How a Failed PR Stunt Revealed a $70 million Contract and Toppled a Succession." The local news, hungry for the human angle, dubbed it the Succession Upset, the invisible engineer who was hiding in plain sight. The story had everything: a family dynasty, a secret code, a public betrayal, and a last-minute reversal. Inside WMG, as Talia's sources confirmed, it was pure pandemonium. The emergency board meeting I had inadvertently triggered was a bloodbath. The major investors, led by Blevins, bypassed my father's authority entirely. They invoked the corporate charter's fiduciary duty clause and passed two motions. First, an immediate independent forensic audit of all WMG contracts and communications for the last 36 months. Second, a formal suspension of Sierra Whitfield's executive promotion pending a mandatory third-party competency and conduct review. They weren't just questioning her, they were dismantling the facade I had exposed. But the most spectacular collapse was Veronica's. She tried to fight back using the only tools she knew: PR and intimidation. She booked a solo interview on a primetime local news program to correct the narrative. It was a catastrophe. She was visibly rattled, her usual icy control replaced by a brittle, defensive anger. When the journalist pressed her on the specifics of the North Ridge violations, Veronica fumbled, accidentally referring to the Environmental Commission as the SEC and confusing metadata with marketing data. She called me unstable and deeply troubled. But the public, now armed with context, saw her not as a concerned stepmother, but as a cornered executive. Within hours, the internet did what it does best. The original clip of the dinner, the one Shoreline had edited to make me look volatile, was exhumed, but this time, users slowed it down. They enhanced the audio. They isolated the sharp, ugly crack of her rings against my hand. They isolated my father's cold rebuke. The narrative flipped. The public comments went from ungrateful daughter to abusive stepmother, the brand partners Veronica had cultivated for years. The ones who traded on her image as a philanthropic socialite ran for the exits. By the end of the day, two major luxury brands and the charity board she chaired had all publicly released statements pausing their relationship with her, pending review. My new office at the Rockwell, meanwhile, was flooded, not with reporters. Talia was running interference, diverting all inquiries to a single, bland statement about pending legal review, but with work. By noon the day after the presentation, I had received 12 project inquiries from community boards and nonprofits across the state. They were small projects, fixer-uppers, centers that needed compliance help, shelters that needed sustainable redesigns. They were the exact kind of work WMG had always dismissed as rounding errors. I spent the afternoon analyzing them. I chose 3: a free clinic in a historically underserved neighborhood, a small library needing a structural retrofit, and the pro bono environmental impact study for a local watershed. I would do them at cost. It was a statement of intent. AWW Studio would not just build for the Maliks of the world, it would build for everyone else. Later that afternoon, Talia forwarded me a leaked email chain from an internal Aquila server. It was from Malik Reyes to his board, sent the night of the meeting. It read, "Today was unorthodox, but it confirms our choice. WMG's proposal was about ROI. Ms. Whitfield's was about the patient. WMG saw the project as an asset. AWW's Studio saw it as a recovery tool. That is the difference. That is why we chose her. Proceed with Phase 2. My phone rang. It was my father. I let it ring 4 times, then answered. "Arya," his voice was hollow, stripped of its usual bluster. "Hello, Graham?" A long pause. He was struggling. "That was quite a performance. You made your point." "It wasn't a performance," I said, my voice quiet. "It was a data presentation." "Yes, well, the board is in chaos. They are They are talking about restructuring. He took a breath. I want you to come back, Arya, not as before. I am offering you the position of chief design partner for all of WMG. You'll report directly to me. You can fix this. The offer was astounding. It was everything he thought I ever wanted. His approval, a title, a place at his side, and it meant he still didn't understand. I cannot fix WMG, Graham, I said. Only WMG can do that, and I'm not looking for a job. What do you mean? This is chief design partner. I am the CEO of my own firm, I replied, the words feeling solid and real for the first time. My firm has the Aquila contract. I will not be your partner. However, if WMG commits to a full, transparent reform, if it adopts the new standards the Environmental Commission is proposing, and if it cleans its house, AWW Studio would be open to discussing a project-based collaboration. As equal partners, quarterly contracts only. He was silent. I had not just refused his offer, I had given him my terms. I see, he said. The line clicked. An hour later, a package arrived from a private courier. It was a small, velvet-lined box. Inside, there was no note, just a single, heavy silver dessert spoon from the Regency set. I turned it over. On the back, in new microscopic engraving, were 3 words: pass, not praise. Oswald. He had stayed out of the press entirely. He had made no statements. He had simply sent his verdict. I had passed his test. This was not about applause. It was about proof. Talia stopped by my new office as I was unboxing a plotter. You're a rock star, she said, which means you're now a target. Do not get sloppy. Do not get vengeful. I'm not, I said. Good, because they will be waiting for it. You're the ethical engineer now. That's your brand. You have to live it. Every email you send, every project you take. It has to be cleaner than clean. No gloating, no cheap shots. When they ask you about Veronica, you say, our focus is on the future of sustainable design. When they ask about Sierra, you say, we are focused on delivering the Aquila project. You stick to the standards, always. The standards? I agreed. That's the point. The next morning, my new team arrived, Derek, Sarah, and Miriam. They walked into the empty office suite, looking shell-shocked. We didn't have desks yet, just a folding table and a coffee machine. I still can't believe it. Sarah, the surveyor, said, I've been working under Sierra for 2 years. She would take my cost-saving analyses, change the title page, and present them as her own. When I tried to speak up, she told me I lacked executive presence. I built the logistics model they used for the North Ridge site, Miriam said, her voice tight. When it worked, it was Sierra's innovative solution. When the environmental data came back bad, it was Miriam's oversight. I've been terrified of being fired for 6 months. We sat there for an hour, drinking bad coffee, and they told their stories. They were my stories. We were the ghosts who had kept the machine running. That ends, I said. Standing up, I went to the one whiteboard we had. That ends today. AW Studio has one founding principle. It's the only one that matters. I wrote it in large black letters. Transparent credit. I pointed to it. Every report, every drawing, every blueprint that leaves this office will have the signatures of every single person who worked on it. Right on the cover sheet, from the lead engineer to the intern who ran the renders. No more ghosts. Your name will be on your work, always. That is the standard. The relief in that room was palpable. It was the foundation of our new company. The calls kept coming. The next one was from Catherine Cole, the head of the Environmental Commission. Ms. Whitfield, she said. We were incredibly impressed by your data and the remediation plans you had already drafted. WMG's actions have highlighted several loopholes in our county regulations. We are forming a new advisory board to rewrite the standards for sustainable building compliance. We would like to offer you a seat as an independent advisor. I was no longer just building buildings. I was being asked to help build the rules. That evening, an email. It was from Sierra's personal account. The subject line was blank. The body of the email contained a single word. Sorry. I stared at it. It was the smallest, weakest possible gesture. It was a word without action, without accountability. It was a word she had probably been advised to send. I thought of the stolen work, the public lies, the whisper in my ear at the dinner. Learn to lose gracefully. I did not reply. Words were her currency. Mine was proof. The next day, Malik called. Phase 2 is green-lit, he said. The board is excited, but this new, higher profile requires a new level of public engagement. We're going to schedule a joint press conference, you and me, next week. They're going to ask us the hard questions. Arya, about WMG, about your family. Be ready. I'm ready, I said. We'll talk about the standards. On Sunday evening, I did what I always did after a major milestone. I drove to the small, quiet cemetery on the hill, the one overlooking the valley. I brought a bouquet of freesias, her favorite. I sat on the grass by my mother's headstone and told her everything. I told her about the silver, and the strike, and the envelope she had left me. I told her about the clause in the prenup. I told her about AWW Studio. You knew, I whispered to the cool marble. You saw it all coming. You left me a sword. I hope I used it right. When I got back to the studio, the last piece of business was waiting. The Regency set. Talia had it delivered in its heavy oak box, along with the 3D scans and the notarized chain of custody documents. It was now evidence in a pending shareholder action. I didn't take it home. I didn't want it in my house. It wasn't a trophy. It was a tool. I had the new vault in the studio server room. I placed the oak box inside. I placed the hard drives with the 3D scans next to it. I placed the legal file. In Hale Legacy Assets. On top, I closed the heavy steel door, turned the key, and spun the combination lock. The click of the tumblers falling into place was the only sound in the room. It was done. The past was cataloged. The WMG board did not wait. They were bleeding investors and credibility. 2 days after the meeting, they sent an emissary. It was not my father. It was his younger brother, my uncle Walter. Walter is the reasonable Whitfield, a man who has sat on the board for 20 years, collecting a check while avoiding any actual decisions. He met me in the lobby of the Rockwell, not in my new office. He was trying to keep it informal. Arya, he said, forcing a warm smile that didn't reach his eyes. What you did, it was something. The board is impressed. Graham is managing, but the board sees an opportunity here, a big one. Hello, Walter, I said. I did not smile. Look, he said, leaning in. This Aquila thing, it's the future. Biomedical is where the money is. The board has authorized me to propose a formal memorandum of understanding, a new joint venture, we'll call it. WMG Biostructures. You and WMG, 50-50. You'll run the design side. We'll handle the capital and the back end. It's the best of both worlds. He was offering me half of a broken kingdom, expecting me to be grateful. No, I said. Walter's smile faltered. No? What do you mean? No, this is a 50% partnership. I am not interested in a partnership, I said, my voice as neutral as the lobby's marble floor. I am not interested in a joint venture. AWW's studio is not for sale, and it is not merging. WMG is a high-risk entity. High risk? We're your father's company. You are a company facing multiple state-level investigations for fraud, I countered. You are a company whose entire executive succession plan was revealed to be a PR campaign built on lies. You are a company that just lost a $70 million contract. You are high risk. I am not. Walter looked stunned. He was used to the old Arya, the one who stayed silent. Here is my offer, I continued. And it is not a negotiation. It is a set of terms. AW/studio will consider collaborating with WMG on the Aquila project, and only the Aquila project, on a strict project-by-project basis. The contract will be quarterly. Quarterly? He sputtered. That's insane. AW Studio will retain 100% creative and operational autonomy. WMG will be the capital partner. Nothing more. Every invoice, every blueprint, every email chain will be open source, accessible to both teams and the client at all times. I leaned in. And there is a new condition. Any WMG executive assigned to this project, including your CEO and your board liaisons, will be required to complete a mandatory 100-hour training course in environmental compliance, ethical governance, and project management transparency, certified by a third party that I will select. They will have to pass the exam before they are allowed in a single meeting with Aquila. Walter recoiled. You're asking the WMG board to go back to school? I am mandating that our partners be competent, I said. And one final condition. The board will immediately table a motion to cut the entire discretionary PR budget for the next fiscal year. All of it, every dollar you were paying Shoreline Atelier. That money will be redirected into a new, independent compliance and audit division. You will stop paying to look good, and you will start paying to be good. Veronica will never agree to that, he whispered, horrified. I don't care, I said. Those are the terms. Send them to the board. You have 24 hours to accept, or AWW's studio will proceed with Aquila alone. We are already fully capitalized to handle Phase 1 ourselves. Your move. I stood up and walked away, leaving him in the lobby. Talia's sources confirmed the board meeting was a firestorm. Veronica, as predicted, tried to have the training clause thrown out, calling it humiliating and a personal attack. But Blevins, the investor, backed by the others, shot her down. Given our current legal exposure, Ms. Hale, he reportedly said, 100 hours of ethics training seems like a bargain. The motion passes. Walter, accept her terms. Veronica was losing her grip, and it was making her sloppy. She went back to the press, trying to spin the narrative. She fed a story to a gossip columnist that Oswald was deeply distraught by my actions, and that his health was failing under the stress. It backfired spectacularly. Within an hour, an old video surfaced on social media. It was from a WMG charity gala 2 years prior. In it, Veronica is speaking to a reporter, laughing. Oh, my father, she says, tapping the reporter's arm. He's sharp as a tack, but his health is a disaster. The doctors say he's got 1 foot in the grave. That's why I've had to take over so many of his financial decisions, to protect him. The clip, juxtaposed with Derek's sworn testimony of a lucid Oswald commissioning the silver, was damning. It was a clear, premeditated effort to build a case for his incompetence. The charity she was representing in the clip, a major children's hospital, released a statement within hours, indefinitely suspending her from their board and returning her last donation. The donors fled. I held my line. Talia had briefed my small PR team. When they ask about Veronica, I instructed them. The only response is, AW Studio is focused on the new systemic standards for the Aquila project. We do not engage in personal attacks. We are a systems-level company. The next day, Sierra sent a text. Can I meet you? Not at the house, not at the office, just somewhere else, please. I met her at a coffee shop on the edge of town, one where neither of us would be recognized. She was not wearing red. She was in jeans and a gray sweater, her hair pulled back. She looked young and exhausted. She was carrying a spiral-bound notebook and a copy of the Fundamentals of Building Code. Hi, she said. She didn't meet my eyes. I just waited. She opened the notebook. It was full of handwritten notes, definitions of load-bearing walls, HVAC, geotechnical reports. I've been trying to learn what this stuff actually means. She finally looked at me. I'm not smart like you, Arya. I'm not an engineer. I never wanted to be, Veronica. She just said I had to be the face, that I had the presence. She said the details didn't matter. That people like you and Sarah were there to handle the details, that my job was to be the story. She closed the notebook. For 8 years, I've just been playing a role, and I didn't care, because it was easy, and I was famous. And then, at that meeting, when you showed the slides, I didn't understand a single word, not the legal part, not the engineering part, and I realized you weren't just showing them what I did, you were showing them what I am, which is nothing. I'm just an empty facade, just like our buildings. The confession hung in the air. It was raw, and it was true. Sorry, I said, is a word. It doesn't fix anything. I know, she whispered, her eyes filling with tears. I know. So what do I do? How do I fix it? I thought for a moment. I thought about the 3 projects I had taken on. You want to prove something? Not to me, to yourself. There is a small rehab center in North Foxton. Their permits for an ADA-compliant wing just got kicked back by the county for the 3rd time. They're out of money and out of time. They need someone to navigate the permitting process, clean up the application, and get it approved. You're good at process. That's what you do. So, do it. Me? I don't know building code. Then learn, I said, standing up. You have 10 days. That's their deadline before they lose the grant. Figure it out. I left her with the coffee and the address for the center. That afternoon, Malik Reyes called. The WMG board is coming to tour the Aquila site model tomorrow, he said. Graham, Walter, Blevins, they're coming to show good faith. I thought you should know. Good, I said. Show them everything. Oh, I will, he said. I'm not giving them the VIP tour. I'm not taking them to the executive lounge. I'm making them walk the entire patient flow model, from the ambulance bay, through intake, into the recovery wards, and into the physical therapy wing. I'm going to make them sit in the family waiting rooms. They want our business. They are going to learn what our business is. The next evening, my father came to my studio. It was late, after 7. My team had gone home. I was alone, sketching out the new studio charter. He just stood in the doorway of the brightly lit, open-plan office. He looked smaller. The stroke, the stress. It had taken its toll. He was looking at the main wall, the one where I had hung our new principle. Transparent credit. Underneath it, on the initial sketches for the Aquila project, were the signatures of all 4 of us. My name, Derek's, Sarah's, and Miriam's. He stood there for a long time, just looking at the wall. You put their names on it, he said, his voice raspy. They did the work, I said, not looking up from my draft. He walked closer, his gaze fixed on the wall. When I started, with your grandfather, it was just our name, Whitfield. That's all that mattered. The name on the building. He touched the edge of the blueprint. I've spent 40 years building a brand, a name, an asset. I've been looking at the assets for so long, I forgot what they were for. He turned to me, his eyes searching my face. You're not building assets, are you? I finally looked up. I look at the people, Graham. The assets will line up behind them. He nodded slowly, a long, painful, acknowledging nod. The board accepted your terms, all of them. The training starts Monday. I'll be there. He turned and, with his slow, dragging gait, he left. Talia emailed me the final contract template. It was a work of art. The quarterly review clause was ironclad. The intellectual property rights were exclusively AWW Studios, and she had added one last masterpiece. All project-related disputes and ethical reviews will be submitted to a binding, independent ethics committee. This committee will consist of 3 members, 1 representative from AWW Studio, 1 from WMG, and 1 independent member, to be elected by the community board of the district in which the project is located. She had literally written the community into the contract. My phone pinged. A text from Derek. It was a picture, a simple steel practice plate. Mr. Hale came back. The text read, he didn't want anything on the silver. He just wanted me to practice. He said the next test was coming. He asked me to engrave this. I zoomed in on the picture. The engraving was simple, strong, and clear. Build for life. I smiled. The first test was over. I had proven competence. I had secured the asset. The final test was different. It was not about what I built. It was about why. I turned back to the blank page on my monitor. I typed the title, The AWW Studio Charter. I wrote the guiding principles: trust, transparency, accountability. People before profit, proof, not praise. The day of the joint Aquila AW studio press conference felt different. This was not a hostile takeover. It was a formal debut. The venue was not a corporate ballroom, but the bright, glass-walled atrium of the Foxton Center for Health, one of the nonprofits I was now advising. The room was packed, but the audience had changed. The pinstriped investors and skeptical business press were still here, but they were outnumbered. The front rows were filled with patients from the clinic, community board members, nurses in scrubs, and local activists. Malik had insisted. This was their project, and they would be the ones to hear the announcement first. The tension was palpable, a low hum of anticipation. This was the first time WMG and I had been in the same public space since the shareholder meeting. The clock was ticking. In exactly 24 hours, the WMG board would hold its special shareholder meeting, a meeting forced by Blevins and the other investors. They would be voting on one item: whether to formally ratify the punishing, ethics-laden collaboration agreement with AWW Studio, my studio charter, as the press had dubbed it, or to refuse, default on the Aquila contract, and face financial ruin. Everything hinged on today. Just as the event was about to begin, Catherine Cole from the Environmental Commission stepped up to the podium for a brief preliminary statement. The room went silent. "The Foxton County Environmental Commission," she began, her voice crisp and official, "has completed its preliminary investigation into the compliance failures at the North Ridge, Boulder, and municipal bridge sites." I saw my father, sitting in the third row with Walter and Blevins, stiffen. "Our findings are clear," Cole continued. "We have found significant, willful violations of state code, including the falsification of completion dates and soil reports, all originating from previous WMG executive management." She emphasized previous, a clear signal. She was giving the board a way out, separating them from Veronica's actions. "These violations demand immediate and significant remediation," she said. "The fines will be substantial, however." She shuffled her papers. "The Commission has also reviewed a detailed, multi-phase remediation plan that was submitted to WMG 9 months ago, a plan that not only corrects the violations, but does so using innovative, sustainable techniques." She looked directly at me, sitting in the front row. "The Commission has voted to adopt this plan as the county's mandatory path forward for WMG. They must follow it to the letter. A plan. I must note, that was authored by Ms. Aria Whitfield. It was a masterstroke. The county was not just fining WMG, it was legally forcing them to follow my exact specifications. The very work they had stolen and buried. I had just become their de facto regulator. Before the press could even process this, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It was a PDF. The file was the finalized, approved, and stamped permit for the North Foxton Rehab Center. Sierra. I looked up and saw her standing in the back of the atrium, near the door. She was alone, clutching her notebook. She had done it. She had met the 10-day deadline. I texted back 2 words. "Good first step." I saw her read the text. She typed back almost instantly. "What's the next step?" I replied. "The permit is just paper. Go back. Talk to the patients. Ask them if the design will actually work for their wheelchairs. Ask them if the lighting will hurt their eyes. Get their sign-off. That's the real permit." I watched her read the message. She looked at the patients in the front row, then back at her phone. She nodded once, to herself, and slipped out the door. The work wasn't the paper. The work was the people. She was just starting to understand. Meanwhile, Veronica was making her final, desperate move. Talia, sitting beside me, got an email alert from her media monitoring service. "Well, she's certainly predictable," Talia whispered, showing me her phone. A new press release had just hit the wire. Veronica Hale pledges $1 million to New Foxton Community Trust. It was a massive public donation, a clumsy attempt to buy back her philanthropic image. "It's pathetic," I whispered back. "Worse," Talia said. "It's stupid." Her fingers were flying. "Give me 30 seconds. She found the corporate registration for the Foxton Community Trust. It had been filed 48 hours ago. The address of incorporation? The same as Shoreline Atelier's holding company. It wasn't a donation. It was a money laundering operation for her own defunct PR firm. Before Talia could even leak it, a reporter in the second row, who had clearly gotten the same alert, was already on his laptop. "This is a shell company," he said aloud to his colleague. It was over. The backfire was instantaneous. My father looked ill. He was trapped. The Environmental Commission had just legally bound him to my work. The investors were watching him, and his wife had just been exposed, again, for fraud. His choice was clear. Accept my studio charter tomorrow, or go down with her. Malik Reyes stepped to the podium. The room quieted. "Thank you all for coming," he said. "Today, we are announcing the $20 million Phase 2 expansion of the Aquila Biosystems campus. But more importantly, we are here to talk about how it will be built." He looked at me. "I had a speech prepared, but I'm throwing it out. Instead, I am ceding my time to our chief architect, Ms. Aria Whitfield, because we did not just hire a designer, we hired a set of principles, and before we signed this contract, we wanted the community to hear those principles from her, not as a promise to investors, but as a pledge to you." He gestured to me. The room applauded. As I stood up, a movement at the side door caught my eye. It was Oswald Hale. He moved slowly, with a cane, an assistant helping him. He did not go to the front row. He walked directly to the podium, past a stunned Malik. He nodded to me. "Arya?" He reached into his coat pocket. He placed 2 objects on the lectern. 2 silver dessert spoons. They were identical, except for the engraving on their backs. "The room is full of noise," Oswald said, his voice a frail whisper, but the microphone picked it up. "People are always desperate for praise." He tapped the first spoon. The light caught the engraving. "Praise. But praise is vapor," he said. "It is the applause. It is the headline. It is nothing. Do not choose the applause." He tapped the second spoon. "Choose the evidence. Choose the work. Choose the proof." He looked at me, his eyes sharp and clear. "Choose this one." He left the spoon marked proof on the lectern, and with his assistant, took a seat in the back. I took a deep breath. I looked past the cameras, past the investors. I looked at the patients in the front row. I looked at the nurses, the families, the community members. "Mr. Reyes is right," I said. "I am here to make a pledge. For a very long time, the company I was associated with built assets. We measured success in square footage and return on investment. The lines on the stock ticker were the only ones that mattered. AWW Studio," I said, my voice clear and strong, "has a different standard. We measure success by the breadth of recovery. We measure it by the angle of the sun in a patient's room. We measure it by the number of steps an amputee can take in a hallway designed to make them feel safe, not exposed. We believe the human being is the only trend line that matters." As I was speaking, I saw Talia look down at her phone. Her face went pale. She looked up at me, her eyes wide, and held up her hand in a stop gesture. I paused, confused. She stood up. "Excuse me, Malik, Arya, I apologize for this interruption, but it is time-sensitive." She turned to the press gallery. "I have just received an email, a courtesy copy, of a lawsuit being filed against my client by Ms. Veronica Hale, alleging theft of a priceless family heirloom, the Regency set. The room gasped. "This is a desperate, frivolous, and frankly pathetic attempt to intimidate," Talia said, her voice dripping with contempt. "And it is already dead on arrival. For the last 2 weeks, we have been in possession of a full 3-dimensional laser scan of the entire 144-piece set. We have notarized forensic analysis proving the engravings are recent. We have the sworn video testimony of the man who engraved them, and we have a complete, unbroken chain of custody." She held up her phone. "This is not an heirloom. It is, as we have stated, evidence, and this lawsuit is nothing more than a signed confession of her intent. Thank you. Please continue, Aria." She sat down. The move was devastating. Veronica hadn't just filed a lawsuit. She had walked into a legal ambush. In the third row, Blevins, the investor, stood up. He didn't address the press. He spoke directly to my father. "Graham," he said, his voice shaking with cold rage, "this is the final straw. This circus, this public display of malice and incompetence. It ends. The board will be voting tonight, to remove Veronica Hale from any and all decision-making roles, advisory boards, and financial oversight positions related to WMG. We are establishing a new, independent standards committee to replace her functions, effective immediately." My father just stared at him. He didn't have the strength to fight. He just nodded. It was done. A hand went up. It was Sierra. She was standing at the back of the room again, her face pale but resolute. "Mr. Cole," she said, her voice shaking but caring, "and Ms. Whitfield, the remediation plan for North Ridge. I want to sign it. I want to publicly add my name to that commitment, to take responsibility as an adult." I looked at her. It wasn't an apology. It was an action. I nodded. "We accept." The event ended. The press surged forward, but Malik's team and Talia's team formed a wall. As I was leaving the podium, my father approached me. He looked 100 years old. "Aria," he said. He didn't look at me as a father or as a boss. He looked at me as the only person left in the room who knew how to build. "Tomorrow, the special shareholder meeting, they will vote on your charter." "I know." "I will be speaking," he said. I would like you to be there as a partner." The countdown was on. 24 hours. As I walked out of the atrium, I paused at the podium. I picked up the small silver spoon Oswald had left, the one engraved "Proof." I slid it into my jacket pocket. The cool, heavy weight of it was a reminder. The climax was not today. The applause was not the end. The real fight, the one that would set the standard for good, was tomorrow. The WMG special shareholder meeting was not held in a grand ballroom. At Blevins's insistence, it was held in the stark, functional auditorium of the County Commission building. It was neutral territory, cold, and lit by fluorescent lights. The board sat at a long table at the front, facing the shareholders. I sat in the front row, flanked by Talia and my AWW studio team. My father, Walter, and Blevins sat at the main table, their faces grim. Blevins opened the meeting. His voice was cold. "This meeting will be brief. We are here to vote on the future of this company. You have all received the documentation. There are 2 paths." He motioned to the large screen. "Path A. We reject the proposed collaboration with AWCU Studio. We maintain our current corporate structure, attempt to find a new contractor for Aquila, and face the full legal and financial consequences of the North Ridge violations and the associated fraud." A murmur of dread filled the room. Path B. We formally accept the studio charter as binding policy. We ratify the quarterly collaboration agreement with AWW's studio structures. We proceed with the Aquila project. We fully fund the environmental remediation plan authored by Ms. Whitfield, and we submit to the governance of the new Independent Standards Committee. He looked at the shareholders. The board has debated this. Now, we vote. Not so fast. The doors at the back of the auditorium swung open. Veronica stood there. She was not in her usual pristine white. She was in a severe black suit, looking like a woman in mourning, or a warrior. Beside her was a new lawyer, a man I did not recognize, carrying a heavy briefcase. "This meeting is proceeding on a false premise," Veronica announced, marching down the aisle. Her new lawyer began handing thick, bound documents to Blevins and the board. "You are all acting as if Sierra Whitfield's succession is negotiable," Veronica said, her voice ringing with false confidence. "It is not." "Veronica, you were removed from all oversight," Blevins said, his voice weary. "You removed me from WMG," she sneered. "You did not remove me from the Hale Trust. My new counsel has copies of my father's original last will and testament. It clearly designates my daughter, Sierra, as the sole beneficiary and successor of his controlling interest in the Hale Trust, which holds the largest single block of WMG shares. This test is a fantasy. The silver is an antique. The will is the legal document." She smiled, a tight, vicious expression. "You cannot vote on Path B, because the controlling interest is, and always has been, Sierra's, and as her mother, I am advising her to reject it." She had played her final card, a will, the one thing that could override everything. The room tensed. My father looked confused. "That is an excellent document, Veronica." Oswald Hale's voice was quiet, but it carried. He was standing near the side entrance, leaning on his cane. He did not look frail today. He looked amused. "A very well-drafted will. I remember signing it in 1998. He began to walk slowly toward the stage. "But a will is a living document, my dear. It can be changed. It can be updated. It can have codicils." He reached the main table. He looked at Veronica's lawyer. "What you have is paper, I believe, in this family. We prefer something a little more substantial." His assistant stepped forward and placed the heavy oak box of the Regency set in the middle of the board table. "Veronica, you have argued that this set is a priceless, unchangeable heirloom, correct?" Oswald asked. "It is," she snapped. "Then perhaps you can explain this." His assistant handed a new document to Blevins. "This," Oswald announced, "is the new legal document. It is a notarized, binding codicil to my will and the Hale Trust, filed 18 months ago, after your marriage to Graham. It legally defines my controlling interest and the Regency set as a single entity, the Hale succession test. It explicitly states that my shares cannot be inherited. They must be earned. They are awarded only to the individual who successfully identifies and acts upon the ethical and competent requirements engraved upon the silver itself. It is all perfectly legal." He smiled. "You thought the silver was a decoration. I turned it into the key." Veronica's lawyer looked panicked. This is irregular. That silver is an antique. You cannot just add terms to it. It is a family relic." "A relic?" Oswald asked. He nodded to Talia, who was standing by the AV booth. The main screen lit up. It was Derek Haynes's video. The entire room, the shareholders, the board, Veronica's new lawyer, watched in high definition as a perfectly lucid Oswald Hale instructed Derek. "The Lex 15.4 here. The coordinates here." The video proved it. The silver was not a static antique. It was a tool, recently and legally modified. Veronica's entire case, the unchangeable heirloom, dissolved. Her lawyer sat down, his document now useless. She had lost. Graham Whitfield stood up. He looked at Oswald, he looked at Veronica, and then he looked at me. He took the microphone. I have been blind," he said, his voice thick. "I have been a fool. I have been so focused on legacy, on the name, that I nearly destroyed the company. I failed to see the true competence in my own house. I publicly apologize to the shareholders for my failure of oversight, and I apologize to my daughter, Aria Whitfield, for underestimating her. He looked at Blevins. This board endorses Path B. I vote yes. Wait, a voice said. It was Sierra. She was standing in the front row. She looked at Veronica, then at me. She walked to the table. She picked up the pen that Talia had used to draft the environmental pact. I am not the heir, Sierra said, her voice shaking but clear. I was just a prop. I am tired of being a prop. I choose proof. She signed her name, next to mine, on the North Ridge remediation plan. Then she looked at the board. I also accept the mandatory training. Blevins called the vote. All in favor of Path B? A sea of hands. It was not just a majority, it was unanimous. Path B is ratified, Blevins said, banging a gavel. The new Independent Standards Committee is hereby formed. Ms. Cole of the Environmental Commission has agreed to appoint the community representative. This meeting is— One moment, I said, standing up. All eyes turned to me. We have one final term to add to the charter, as ratified. I said, AWW/studio requires a quarterly review clause. If at any point, the new Standards Committee finds that WMG has breached a transparency or ethics protocol, AWS/studio retains the right to pull out of the collaboration, in full, effective immediately, and retain all associated contracts, including Aquila. It was the kill switch, the final piece of accountability. Blevins did not hesitate. The board accepts, so ratified. As the room began to break, Veronica stood alone. Her lawyer was already packing his briefcase. The board was talking to Oswald. The investors were talking to me. She turned, her face a mask of stone, and walked toward the exit. No one stopped her. No one spoke to her. No security guards escorted her. She just left. The room, which had once been her stage, was now just a room she was no longer in. There was no applause. There was no drama. Just silence. Oswald approached me, leaning on his cane. He picked up one of the forks from the set, the one Derek had engraved "Pass" on. You passed the test, Arya, he said quietly. I just presented the facts, I said. No, he said, pressing the fork into my hand. That was the easy part. The hard part was what you did not do. You had the power to destroy them, to ruin your father, to humiliate your sister, to publicly shame Veronica. You did not. You chose to build standards instead. You did not win against them. You won against your own ego. That was the real test. Arya Malik, a reporter called out. Malik Reyes was suddenly at my side. An excellent outcome, he said, beaming. He held up a contract. Shall we sign for Phase 2? In front of the press, right on the board table, Malik and I signed the $70 million contract. A reporter shouted, Arya, how does it feel to finally get your revenge? I looked at her. I thought of Oswald's words. I thought of my mother's letter. I smiled. This is not revenge. This is the new standard. My father approached, his hand outstretched. Walter was behind him, looking relieved. Arya, Graham said. Partner. I looked at his hand. I did not take it in a hug. I did not give him the emotional reunion he might have wanted. I was not his daughter in that moment. I took his hand firmly, a handshake, professional, clear. Graham, I said. We had set the boundary. That night, I drove to the cemetery. The air was cool and clear. I sat by my mother's grave. It is done, I whispered. I took 2 things from my pocket. I placed the silver spoon Oswald had left on the podium, the one marked proof, on her headstone, nestled beside the flowers. I showed them the proof, Mom, just like you said. But I kept the other one, the fork Oswald had given me, the one marked Pass. I slid it back into my pocket. It was a reminder, a promise, that I would only use the power I had, that I would only pass the test. If I could answer the question, who is this for? The next morning, I was the first one at the new AWW studio office. My team, Derek, Sarah, and Miriam, arrived together. They stopped in the lobby. On the main wall, Framed in simple black steel was the AWW's studio charter, signed by all four of us. And beneath it, engraved on a small, simple steel plaque, was the only standard that mattered. Praise fades, proof remains. No one ever saw the twist coming. They had all been watching the drama, the slap, the public fight. They were waiting for the applause, but they stayed to the end. And they finally saw the difference between applause and evidence. They finally understood why the real climax could only happen when the proof was finally and fully presented. Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to connect with you. So please comment below and let us know where in the world you are listening from and what your thoughts are on Arya's journey. Please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like this video, and give us extra support by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by more people.